Hi everyone, and thanks so much for your interest in the Introduction to Handstands course that I'll be running coming up. It's a 9-week course, and I want to reassure you that there is absolutely no expectation at the end of the 9 weeks that you are a handstand expert. Um, I've been training handstands now pretty consistently for 4 years and very intensely for the last 3 months. And my handstands are just starting to get to a point where I think I can actually officially say I can do a handstand, which is freestanding away from the wall. So, why handstands? Why would you want to do handstands? Why would you want to do a 9-week course? It's a really good question. I did the GMB, where am I here? The GMB apprenticeship about 4 years ago, and didn't really have an intention in doing the apprenticeship to really want to do handstands. I used to do gymnastics as a kid, and I was quite good at handstands and cartwheels. But as an adult, I'm like, why on earth would I want to do handstands? Why would that be something that would be even relevant for me? As part of doing the apprenticeship, we had to do handstands because it's part of the method and it's part of what we need to learn how to do and to teach to be accredited as a GMB trainer. And I have to admit, it wasn't really a part of the apprenticeship that I was really looking forward to. Um, Again, because of that, why would I want to do it? But what I started to really appreciate as we got into the training is just how much handstands work the whole body in an incredibly powerful way. It works your strength from head to toe. It works your flexibility from head to toe. It works your body awareness in space, your spatial awareness from head to toe, and it works your body control. And so, in terms of those physical and mental benefits that we can get from different types of training, handstands really gives you an opportunity to kind of package it all up in one thing. And so the benefits are just amazing. I've then I then kind of thought, what because I can't do a handstand, can I teach handstands? And I shied away from teaching handstands for a long time because of that. I'm not a hand balancer. I'm not masterful at handstands by any means. And then I had a term a couple of years ago where I had a gap. And I said to a couple of people in the class that I was teaching on a Wednesday morning, which is the GMB movement class, does anyone want to come and train handstands with me? So I didn't really it wasn't intentionally going to be a teaching class. It was more just come and do some training with me and explore handstands with me. And from there, it's really just grown. And what I've really learned to appreciate is because I'm not a master hand balancer, because I'm still really learning the skill myself, it really helps me to be a good teacher to others because I understand how things feel really hard. I understand how things can progress. Um, and I understand kind of the stages that you go through and the insights that you get and how things change. So it's been a really enjoyable, we've been teaching handstands now for a year. The class that I have has grown to a point where I can't take any more in that one class, but I've got lots of people curious to learn handstands with me. So we're starting a second class this coming up this term. There'll be some people in this room here with me, which is in Abbotsford, and there'll be some people online, which is the same as I'm currently teaching. So I do, whether you're in the room with me or whether you're at home online, we can absolutely have an incredible experience and we can learn it together. If you are online and you have an opportunity once or twice to come and join me in the studio, that can be really nice too, just to get some more visual feedback. But if you are not located near here and you are going to be online full time, that will be absolutely fine. So what I wanted to do in this little video today was to give you that intro, reassure you that it doesn't matter what level you're starting at, it doesn't matter what level you get to at the end of the 9 weeks. There's huge physical and mental benefits just from training handstands and building that strength, flexibility, control, and all over body awareness. I have people at all levels in the program. I have people who are getting very close to doing freestanding handstands, and I have people who aren't yet kicking up against the wall. And I have some little testimonials that I'll share as well at the end of this video. So what I wanted to do now is just give you a few exercises to start working on before we start the program, and give you some things to really think about and start to condition. And the first thing is going to be our wrists. So training handstands is really challenging on the wrists. It's really challenging on the forearms. One of the things that I have really appreciated, which I didn't appreciate before I started training as an adult, is just how much of the handstand comes from our grip and finger strength and our forearm strength as being part of our overall grip strength. So hands, fingers, wrists, forearms, and up into the shoulders, down through the lats, into the core, into the glutes, into the legs, but it starts in the fingers and the wrists. So you will get sore in the wrists when we start. We will do at the start of every session a really lengthy wrist prep. And I'm just going to give you a few wrist exercises that I think would be really helpful to get started with as we move into the program, and things to keep working on then as we're actually doing the program. So I'm just going to pop my camera down a little bit so I can come to floor level and do some work on the floor. So we're going to start with wrists, and you can just be sitting on the floor. I quite like this one where you clasp your hands together and just roll your wrists over as a really nice way to start to get the wrists prepped and warmed up. You can really mess with your brain by trying to go the other way. It's a lot harder than you would think. So give that a go. Then when we do our full wrist prep, I'm going to take you through that full wrist prep now. We start on all fours. This bit of the elbow here we call the elbow pit. It probably has a more technical name, but that's what we call it. And we want to just start by taking that elbow pit, rotating it around and rotating it forwards. As you rotate the elbow forwards, I want you to feel like the rotation is coming from the armpits and under here. So it's a whole rotation. It should feel reasonably strong. Really working on this rotation of the elbow pits, because this is the position, that rotated elbow pit forward, that's the position we need to be able to hold in our handstands. So rotating the elbow pits forward. And we do about 10 of those. And then from there, we're going to come up, lifting the heels of the hands off the floor, trying to keep that rotation of the elbow pits as we come up onto the fingers. And then we can come all the way up onto the fingertips. You might find that quite challenging. I absolutely found that incredibly challenging when I first started doing this work. I could not at all come up onto my fingers while keeping my elbow tips rotated forward. I just did that, wasn't strong enough. So it's a really good indication of your starting level of strength. Coming up, working the fingers, working the wrists, working right through the arms. Then what we're going to do is we're going to take the fingers out to the sides, and we're going to push into the floor so we get a little bit of elevation of the shoulder blades, and then gently rock from side to side, finding the end of your range, and then just slowly pushing a bit further. You'll notice one wrist might be tighter than the other. My left wrist is a lot tighter than my right at the moment. You keep doing those until you feel like, yeah, that feels pretty good. Then what we're going to do, and I'll show you this from the side, is we're going to take our fingers and we're going to face them around to face the knees, palms flat on the floor, and we're just going to rock back. Now this is quite a strong stretch. I find lots of people with all of our computer work are really stiff through the wrists, and this is really challenging. So you can unweight it a little bit by coming closer to the knees and then rocking back a little bit. If you've got nice mobile wrists, you can go a little bit further away. There's no prizes for being far away, just find what feels good for you. Again, do kind of 10 or so of those, holding the end, really feeling that stretch all through the front of the wrist. Then what we're going to do is we're going to turn the hands over so the palms face up and the tops of the hands are on the floor. Now, I can absolutely guarantee you the first time you're doing this, it will be awful. It will feel incredibly hard. You might find that you have to have your elbows bent because you can't get your arms straight. This is such a good stretch, particularly as you get into working handstands and your forearms start to get really sore and tight. What we can then do in this position, depending on your level of mobility, is play with that rotation of the elbow pits while the hands are in this position. And that will really work all through here. One thing I've started to do a little bit recently, a bit differently, is to take one hand and hold the other hand flat as I do that rotation. And then I'm finding I'm able to get a little bit further and a little bit more of a stretch. So it's probably going to feel really awkward, really awful. I absolutely understand that. I know that's how I felt when I started this one. The funny thing now is that it's actually my favorite wrist prep stretch now. Give that a little bit of a shake. And the last one we're going to do is bringing shoulders over wrists, fingers facing forward, rotate the elbow pits, push into the floor, and then just bring the shoulders forwards over the wrists as far as feels comfortable to you. What I want you to tune into as you bring the shoulders forwards and backwards is how the weight shifts in your hand, because the weight position in the hands is where the balance in the handstand starts. And what we're aiming for in terms of where we feel it in our hands in a handstand is more forward than you might think. We're really trying to be at the base of these knuckles. We really want to feel the weight here and into the fingers. We don't want to start with the weight in the heel of our hand, because then we've got nowhere to go as we start to underbalance and overbalance. So that's our wrist prep. Just while we're on fingers and hands, in terms of the role that the fingers play, if you think about standing, and you can do it now, just stand, eyes open, just tune into the feet. What are your feet doing? Stand on one foot. What do your feet do? What do your toes do? How do they help to rebalance you? Stand on the other foot. What are the feet and toes doing? Put your feet down, lean forwards, and notice how the toes grip in the floor to stop you falling. Lean backwards and notice where the break comes from leaning backwards. We actually bring the hips counterbalance forwards to stop us falling backwards. And if you think about reversing that on your hands, that's exactly what's happening. You're standing on your hands and your feet are coming over your head. It's your fingers that grip. If your feet start to fall backwards, it's the shoulders that move to rebalance. And then do that same again, but close your eyes. Close your eyes and now stand on one foot and see how much harder the foot has to work and the toes have to work to hold your balance. And they're little micro shifts, micro rebalances all the time, trying to hold us upright, standing on one leg. So this is the kind of body awareness that we're trying to build upside down, little micro rebalances with the fingers, little micro rebalances everywhere else. So we need to build our finger strength. A great way of starting with finger strength, just to build that proprioception awareness, is with 2 bits of paper or 1 bit of paper, and you can swap hands, on the floor, squeezing the paper, squeeze your fingers, squeeze the paper, and you want to be able to scrunch it up. You might find, as a first time, you might find this really hard, but such a good exercise really to start to build that forearm strength, finger strength, because that's where our handstand starts. Moving up to the shoulders, then, our next exercise is some scap shrugs, and we're going to do this from a few different positions. So scap shrugs is thinking about this whole shoulder blade. When we do a handstand, we want the shoulder blade to be elevated, so we want our shoulders to be up around our ears. A really good cue is imagine that you've got a dog trying to lick your ears, and you don't want to let the dog get to your ears. So you're really trying to cover your ears with your shoulders. And at the same time, we're thinking about this shoulder blade wrapping around the rib cage. So that whole shoulder blade wraps around and elevates. So it builds shoulder flexibility, because to have the flexibility in your shoulders to come up while staying wrapped around, it's quite challenging, as well as having our shoulders stacked over our wrists. So we're in a nice straight line, wrists, shoulders, hips, feet and ankles. So our scrap shrugs exercise, we do this from a couple of positions. First one here, squeeze the shoulder blades together and then push away from the floor as hard as you can. So really, again, feel the weight in your fingers, feel the weight in the front of the hands, pushing into the floor, and then squeeze the shoulder blades together. And then push and squeeze and push. So that's the first position. We can make this a little bit harder then by moving out to a plank. Squeeze the shoulder blades together and push the floor away. Thinking about where is the weight in my hands, in the floor. Squeeze and push. Squeeze and push. It's a pretty strong exercise. You'll probably find just a couple of those is enough to start with. But we're really trying to tune into that, elevate the shoulders, push away, strengthen that movement, strengthen that connection between the shoulder blades. And we're going to start to move into bringing the hips over the wrists more as we do that, but that's a good starting one. Then the next movement, which I really love, is the A-frame, and getting into shrugs from the A-frame and then into our backwards bear movement. So we're going to do those 3 next, and then we're just going to finish with a couple more. So the A-frame, coming up, shoulders over wrists, hips over knees, rotate the elbow pits forward, push into the floor, and push the hips up. So like downward dog, but not quite as far stretched out. In this position here, then just thinking about push the hips up as you elevate the shoulders, lengthen the legs down, and just hold that position, noticing where you feel it, noticing where
Maybe you're strong and flexible, maybe where you're stiff and the strength isn't. Where do you start to feel tired first? Tune into the fingers, feel the floor with the fingers, push into the floor with the palm of the hand, rotating the elbow pits, pushing the floor away, elevate the shoulders to the ears, push the chest down and the hips up and lengthen back with the heels. And then come down and just pausing for a moment to think about what did I notice, where did I notice it. Then what we're going to do is we're going to do an A-frame with some shrugs. Now, you don't have to do all of this in one session, but I'm just going to give you this sort of overview of these core exercises that if you wanted to start to do some practice before we get into the program, these are the best things to practice. So A-frame shrugs then, thinking about this movement that we did here, but we're going to do it from that A-frame position. So coming up into the A-frame, what we want to do here is let the shoulders come away from the ears and then push and bring the shoulders right up to the ears. Let the shoulders come away from the ears, push, bringing the shoulders right up to the ears, keeping the elbow pits rotated forward, thinking about the shoulder blades wrapping around the rib cage. Let the shoulders come away, push. If you want to, you can come up on your toes to bring the shoulders more over the wrists. Even walk your feet in a little bit so you're more vertical. Let the shoulders drop away. Push. Let the shoulders drop away. Push. Where's the weight in the hands? What are the elbow pits doing? And that is a really good exercise to start to understand the feeling that we're trying to get to in the handstand and really working that whole chain from the fingers through to the lats. One of my absolute favorite handstand prep moves and handstand conditioning moves is the backwards bear, which really then brings that A-frame shrug movement into it with a bit of locomotion and a bit of movement, so it becomes a bit more fun. It also works our flexibility and strength in different ways. So what we're going to do, I'm just going to come a little bit further forward here. We're going to come up into that A-frame. Just pause here for a second. Just get yourself set, elevating the shoulders. And then what we're going to do is we're going to step backwards with one foot, just a little way. And then I'm going to step the opposite hand back about the same distance as I've moved my foot. And then I'm going to move my other foot and then the other hand. As we're doing this, we really want to think about rotating the elbow pit, pushing into the floor to elevate the shoulder blade, wrapping the shoulder blade around the rib cage, moving backwards smoothly with control. So when we are, just come forwards again, when we are here and I am about to take my right hand off, my left hand I'm really thinking about starting from the fingers, pushing into the floor, elevate the shoulder blade. So I'm not here, I'm up here, elevating the shoulder blade, wrapping the shoulder blade around the rib cage as I then put the other hand back down. Backwards bear is such a nice movement. It stretches you out, works your flexibility, works your strength, works your core. If you do a minute of that every day, that's going to be great preparation. So the next preparation we've got is a hollow body hold, and this is a really challenging move for the core. So we're going to set up for this one, and I'm going to show you the progressions, and then you can work on this at a level that is good for you. We will work on the hollow body hold in every single session. So hollow body hold on our back,
the first thing we're doing with knees up is pushing our low back into the floor. If you had something like a piece of paper under your low back, you shouldn't be able to pull it out. So really push hard with your low back into the floor. Depending on your level of strength, this may be enough, and that's perfectly fine. This on its own really does work everything quite hard. The next thing we want to do is think about bringing the sternum down towards the belly button to lift our head and shoulders off the floor. So to lift our head and shoulders off the floor, it's not just lifting the head up, but it's actually compressing the chest to bring the sternum down towards the belly button, to compress the chest and lift the head and shoulders off. We're going to have our hands by our side. If you want to, you can try to bring your hands over your head and see how that feels. It's a little bit harder. The lower you bring your hands, the harder it will be to hold that position. Then the next progressions from here are to straighten the legs, keeping the lower back pushed into the floor, and then gradually what we want to be able to do is bring the legs lower and lower until they're just floating above the floor and your hands are just floating above the floor over your head while you're keeping your low back pushed into the floor. So very, very challenging movement. You might not be able to get into that full position. I couldn't get into that full position for a long time. You might only be able to hold that full position for a few seconds. So a couple of things, a couple of ways to play with this as a movement. The first one is to start in the full position, elevate the shoulders like you're doing a handstand but on the floor, compress the chest, tuck the tail, lift the legs, hold everything as tight as you can for 5 seconds and then come down. So that is one way to practice this at the highest progression, the hardest level, but only for a short period of time, holding your body all tight. The other way to do it then is to find the level that you can work at to hold it for 30, 40, 50 or 60 seconds, gradually building up the amount of time you can hold those harder positions for. So at the moment, for me personally, I can hold that full position for about 40, 45 seconds. I'm not yet up to a minute holding that full position. That's where I'd like to get to in terms of my own practice. That's the whole body hold. The last thing I'm going to give you to think about as we move into the program is the handstand setup with a bail. So the hardest thing with handstands for most people is a fear of falling, a fear of what happens if I kick up and I'm going to fall over. So we do, for the first 3 weeks of the program, we don't do any kicking up at all. Then we go to the wall. But we do start right from the beginning of the program of working on the handstand setup and how to bail. So I'm going to do the setup first and then we'll look at the bail. So the handstand setup, I'll show you from the side and from the front. We'll start from the side. We want to come into this position on our knees, hands about shoulder width apart, rotate the elbow pits forward, push into the floor. Feel the weight on the floor with the hands, thinking about weight in the, like underneath that first finger knuckle, and I'm feeling the floor with my fingers. So that's the first thing. So the shoulders are actually a little bit forwards over the wrists. They're not a long way forwards, but if we're back here, we're going to have too much weight behind and it's going to be we won't be able to kick up. So we want to feel the weight with the floor, with our fingers in the floor. Rotate the elbow pits, push into the floor. Then what we're going to do is lift the hips and bring one foot forward into that runner's stance. As we're in that runner's stance, still thinking about rotate the elbow pits, push into the floor to elevate the shoulders, wrap the shoulders around the rib cage. Where's the weight in the floor with your hands? Just hold that position and come down. So even doing that feels quite strong, and you may find that getting into that setup position, that's quite challenging, and that's great. And that's what we're going to be working on to start with. Your question next might be, which leg do I bring forward, which leg do I have back? And that's going to be different for everybody based on which side, if you were going to cartwheel, would you naturally cartwheel to. So for me, if I'm going to do a cartwheel, I'm going to go left hand down and I'm going to kick up with my right leg. So when I do a handstand setup, I am left foot forward, right leg back, because that's the leg I'm going to kick with. You might be, if you're going to do a cartwheel, you might go right foot forward, right hand down, and then you're kicking with your left leg. How do you know which side if you don't know which side? It's a really good question. One test can be, if you're going to close your eyes and lean forwards and fall, which leg do you step forward with to catch your fall? For me, I step forward with my left and then I kick with my right. I find the class is about 50-50, but you need to figure out which is your side. So as we're coming into the class, have a play with both sides and see which side feels easier, smoother, stronger, more natural, more flexible. And then when you come into the class, you'll have a sense of which side you're working with. So if we do that again, set up, rotate the elbow pits forward, push into the floor, bring the hips up, step forward with one of your feet. So the foot that you were going to kick with would be behind. You're in that runner's position. Rotate the elbow pits, push into the floor, feel the weight. Hold that position, see what that feels like. Play with rocking backwards, forwards. See how strong you feel and come down. So the last thing that we're going to work on is the cartwheel bail. And this is then for to build your confidence with, if I'm going to try and do a handstand and fall out, I don't need to think about falling out, it's just going to happen naturally. And we will start working on this from the first week. The most challenging bit with this as an exercise is figuring out which side I'm going to bail to, and that's really figuring out which is your cartwheel side, because what we're going to do is we're going to set up. Actually, I said I was going to show you that setup from the front, didn't I? So let's do that. Let's do that first. So handstand setup, hands about shoulder width apart, rotate the elbow pits forward, push into the floor to elevate the shoulders, lift the hips, one foot steps forward, and we're just going to hold that there. Okay, so then cartwheel bail. If I'm going to kick up into a handstand and I'm going to fall out, I want to know that I can bail out safely. So how do we work on that? We work on that by gentle progressions. So the first thing we're going to do is know which is my side to cartwheel to. When I've figured out my side, and you might just want to try both sides, the same leg as you would lead with, that hand goes slightly forward. So for me, that's my right leg and right hand. So what I'm going to do is set up with my right hand in front of my left hand, set up to do that handstand position, and all I'm going to do is take my right leg and step slightly to the side. So from the front, I'm here, coming up, take my right leg and step slightly to the side. So we're not trying to get heaps vertical, we're just getting that feeling of what does it feel like to go to one side. So if you're not sure which side you go to, try both sides. So if I was going to do the other side, step the left hand forward, have the left leg back, step the left leg over to the right. That's not my natural side, so it doesn't feel as good. What we want to play with then, gradually over time, is coming from this position, getting a little bit more vertical with our bail. So legs come a little bit higher. Then, as we build a bit more confidence, getting a little bit higher again. And then as we get more and more confidence with that, we start to bring the hands closer together. So the stagger in the hands gets less and less, a little bit higher, a little bit closer, until we're doing that bail movement, hands together, coming up into that handstand setup, kicking the leg up and bailing out to the side. So that is a series of progressions that I don't expect you to be good at right away, but showing you where we're headed. I'm out of breath. I think that's enough. I think that's about a half-hour intro to give you lots of things to think about and work on as we head into the weeks before we actually start the program. We won't be introducing anything really different or new to those series of exercises in the first 3 weeks. And then beyond the first 3 weeks, we start to get a bit harder. So the 9 weeks of the program is split into three 3-week modules. Module 1 really is just about building our strength and confidence and our body awareness so that we're conditioned to start to practice handstands. Module 3 then is we start to think about getting upside down, and we're against the wall with lots of scaffolding and lots of support, so there's no fear around that. And then module 3 is about setting you free. If you're ready, if you're not ready, we don't move away from the wall. As I said, I've got people who've been training with me for 3 terms, nearly a year, and we're not yet kicking up even at the wall, let alone away from the wall, which is, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that because we're still building this incredible strength, flexibility, control, and body awareness of being upside down. So give me a call, send me a message if you've got any questions, and I will see you in a few weeks' time ready to start our Intro to Handstands course.
I joined Katie's handstand classes almost a year ago. It was quite a terrifying thing for me to think about ever being up in a handstand, ever actually been upside down. But the experience has been amazing. Katie has been so supportive. She's really helped me to be able to overcome this fear. For me, it's not about actually getting in the handstand, it's being able to overcome that fear. And I proudly say I'm quite confident now being upside down. I'm also getting a lot stronger. And it's so much fun. We play, we laugh. It's great connecting with the group. And also this skill of, or this muscle of facing into my fears and moving through that has been incredible, and it helps me taking on other challenges in my life. And I would highly recommend Katie's handstand classes.
Handstands have been the highlight of my week. Every week that they're on, Friday morning is just such an important time of day for me. It's fun, the group's fun, you make it fun. There's a real sense of support of each other's progress, excitement, when somebody in the room does something that they haven't done before, haven't done so well before, and I love that there's a real sense of achievement and shared joy in that achievement. On a personal note, I just feel stronger. Being able to come along to classes, especially those being so close to home for me, has really helped me keep a routine in exercise that I have struggled to do so for many years. And I just feel stable and strong and healthy and excited about what my body might be able to do in the future. I've challenged my body in many ways over the years, across all aspects of life, and also not to worry about being able to do a handstand. Like, these classes are so much more than being able to do a handstand and having success in holding and achieving a handstand. It's really a small component of, although of course it always gearing towards being able to perform that elusive handstand. But really coming in with an open heart and a willingness just to enjoy being in your body and seeing how it can perform, would be a great way to come into classes. Like, don't stress about not being able to do a handstand or imagining that you could ever do a handstand. A very personal, relatively early achievement for me. There is a move, we call it hollow body hold, of which there are sort of several different versions of it, and one of them's laying on the floor, and I could not lay on the floor and lift my legs off the floor while keeping my lower back flat to the floor when we started. I just couldn't do it, so I had to have my legs right up to support the correct alignment in my body and really work to activate the core muscles that were responsible for maintaining that lower back position as it increased the weight of the legs going down towards the floor. And noticing myself be able to start doing that was very cool. So it was the first really obvious manifestation of a change in my ability and capacity. So that there's a personal one. I love handstands. Say, best day of the week. Absolutely delighted that handstands are in my life. I occasionally do them here in this space as well. I've enjoyed doing them when I've been traveling to keep some exercise up, because you don't need much space, you don't need anything special. There's just a whole routine of different things that I'm able to draw upon to get a bit of movement into my life as I've traveled around as well. So thank you, Katie. Welcome to the new cohort, Handstanders.